Dreams of Tomorrow is an experience where a thick veneer of theme is plastered over a game in which 1 to 6 players race around the consciousness fragments that create the collective consciousness, collecting creativity, hope, and experience. These can be used to catch dreams from the dreamscape and weave them together into your dream sequence to be sent to the past in an effort to save the present and the future. Or in other words, move their pieces around a rondelle of sorts that allows them to use card special abilities, collect one of 3 different types of resources, use those resources to buy cards from the middle, or play them to their tableau. When a dream is weaved, it's placed down in a sequence overlapping any existing cards already played. While cards can be played to either end of the sequence, they can't be played in between other cards, and only the front card in the sequence, as well as any cards acquired but not yet weaved, can be used for their special ability. Points are awarded for matching shapes at the tops and bottoms of the cards, and for star numbers on the top corner. Once a player has weaved 5 dreams, they trigger the end of the game. Dreams of Tomorrow is a nice little game. As I alluded to before, it's thick and dripping with theme and thematic elements. It permeates the rulebook, the nomenclature, nomenclature ranges from the rulebook to the nomenclature. And while the theme can sometimes make the elements of the game a little bit confusing at times, the most obvious benefit to it is the vibrant artwork. The components themselves aren't overwhelmingly fantastic. The pieces are a bit small, most of it's on cards, but it's those cards that are laced with bold and vivid artwork, ethereal planescapes that try to really hammer in that theme of this being in a dreamscape. Now, about those 3 resources that I mentioned before, creativity, hope, and experience, I was a little skeptical about having to balance 3 separate resources in a pretty small, short game. Now, that criticism is tempered with the fact that you can cap out each one of these at a pretty low level, meaning you can get to a certain point where you can't gain any more of one particular type of resource. Now, that means you can't just hoard any one particular resource or any resource. You can't just spend most of the game stockpiling it. You have to budget things accordingly. And that cap, believe it or not, makes that multi-resource track a little more interesting than I think it otherwise would have been if you could have completely stockpiled things. It also helps that the iconography is very easy to read, and sure, maybe I get the names of what those resources are mixed up, but I'm not going to mix up the difference between a picture of a candle and a picture of a clock. And while yes, there's multiple elements to this system, the system itself is intuitive. It's something that makes sense as you go along and as you play. Speaking of the system, the scoring aspect is something I think that is a big plus for this game. You're not necessarily managing or keeping track of points as the game goes on. Certainly when you take dreams and you put them into your dreamscape and you weave them into your dreamscape, you get a certain set amount of points. Nice and easy, simple to read, simple to know how many points you got for a specific card that you've weaved into your dreamscape. But added on to that is this set collection idea, where each card has a certain number of shapes, either on the top, the bottom, or both. And as you line cards up next to each other, the more shapes that you get in a line, the more points you get. So you're constantly having to choose between the cards that you've acquired, which ones fit best into your dreamscape, versus which ones are just bulk amount of points. It's got a little bit of race to the end, it's got a little bit of set collection, resource management. It's got a little of a lot of different things. And while that maybe normally would be a confusing and a bad thing, in this particular instance, I think it works to serve as a contact point for interesting decisions. And I think that's where this game really shines, in the fact that you are presented with a large amount of interesting small decisions. The decisions that you make affect the other players, and oftentimes they affect them in a positive way, which is something that I'm not quite used to seeing all that frequently. Certainly you can screw up the rondelle a little bit and they'll be maybe in a different place than they expected to or wanted to be, but each time that you gain a resource on an action spot, most of the time your opponents are also gaining the same resource or some other benefit. So yes, in its nature it is a competitive game where you're trying to beat the other players, but in that process, your process of helping yourself, you're also helping the other players. And it's that gooey feels nice type of thing that makes it a much more relaxing game than it otherwise would be in an outright completely competitive cutthroat game. Sure, most of the components, artwork completely aside, are perhaps a little underwhelming compared to what you see in a big production board game. So yeah, if you're in the market for something like a lightweight Euro game that you can play within 30 to 40 minutes, you can't go too wrong with this. It has a solid single player mode, it has elements to add in more chaos into an otherwise relaxing game, and for me it hits a lot of the dreamy marks that it's aiming to hit. So there you have it, Dreams of Tomorrow from Weird Giraffe Games. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more reviews or board game humor, please like and subscribe. Thank you again for watching, and good night.